Good morning, you're watching World News and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. Vladimir Putin has suggested that Ukraine be placed under temporary administration. According to Putin's claims, it would allow for new elections and signing of key accords to reach a resolution to the war.
Speaking at a submarine christening ceremony in Murmansk, Vladimir Putin also said he believes his American counterpart, Donald Trump, truly wants peace. Putin went on to commend Trump's efforts to hold direct talks with Russia. Putin's comments come amid US attempts to re-establish links with Moscow. The Kremlin leader also said that Russia is ready to cooperate with North Korea to end the war.
Russian forces once again targeted the Odesa region on Thursday night using drones and missiles. One person was wounded in the aftermath. The strike damaged garages as well as private residential blocks and sparked fires in multiple locations. The flames, however, were quickly extinguished by firefighters from the Ukrainian State Emergency Service and the National Guard. According to Ukrainian officials, 7 fire trucks and 35 firefighters were involved in containing the blaze. As Bloomberg reported on Thursday, the U.S. wants to control all major investments related to infrastructure and the extraction of Kyiv's mineral wealth. The move would allow the U.S. to block Kyiv's other allies and undermine Ukraine's application to join the European Union.
The agency arrived at a draft version of the new US-Ukraine rare earth mineral agreement. It shows that Donald Trump's administration is demanding a right of first refusal. If concluded in this form, the agreement would mark an unprecedented US economic expansion in Europe's largest territorial state, at a time when Ukraine is seeking rapprochement with the EU. The document states that the US considers the material and financial benefits provided to Ukraine since Russia's full-scale invasion in February 2022 as its contribution to this fund. In effect, this would mean that Trump administration would force Ukraine to pay for all US military and economic support provided since the start of the war before Kyiv could draw any income from the partnership fund.
Trump's role is to make Putin think that he's winning something, said Robert Niblett, distinguished fellow at Chatham House. Appearing on TVP World's On the Record, Niblett said that everyone is playing their roles behind the negotiating table and that the process could be only in its infant stages.
What is clear is that there is no 30-day ceasefire. So what is your assessment? Where do we stand with all of this now?
Well, where we stand with it is that, I don't know if you watched the whole of the Tucker Carlson interview with Witkoff, which sadly I did. Tucker Carlson keeps saying what a brilliant negotiator Steve Witkoff is, and then the Trump administration. I remember Trump 1.0, the North Korean negotiations lasted for a while, then President Trump lost interest, and we've ended up with a more dangerous situation in North Korea than when he was president beforehand. We've had the brilliant negotiation in the Middle East to stop the fighting and to end up with the release of some of the hostages. And now we've got war against Hamas again. So, I'm afraid my fear is that where we are with the negotiations is right at the beginning of a grinding process. And I think everyone, if I may say so, is playing their role.
Right.
Ukraine is playing its role, trying to keep America on side, but continuing to defend itself as much as it can. The Europeans are playing their role, which is to say, we're going to help you, President Trump. We're going to actually make sure that Ukraine can survive and you won't have to worry too much about it. We're going to provide a reassurance force. Yes, we'd like some intelligence, but you probably heard there's now discussions, and President Macron even made the comment that we may have to go there alone. Now, I know there may be other European countries that won't be willing to. And the Europeans are keeping up the sanctions. They passed a 17th sanction package just recently, which is the opposite of what you think the US would be doing. So I think everyone's playing their role.
Yeah.
And Trump's role, if I were to be sort of charitable, Trump's role is to make Putin think that he's winning something.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has claimed that the United States is constantly changing the terms of the proposed minerals deal. Speaking from Paris on Thursday, Zelensky called on American officials to toughen their stance against Russia and discuss the 30-day ceasefire deal with Moscow.
The conditions are constantly changing. I thought that we had agreed that there will be a framework deal, and then the full deal. Now, as I understand, the Ukrainian and American teams are working on it, because the U.S. is changing these conditions and offers to sign the full deal right away. We need the U.S. to be stronger regarding Russia. We want the president of the U.S. to be stronger regarding the leader of the Kremlin. Russia, Putin in particular, he is not ready for direct negotiations. I am not afraid of any format of talks. The U.S. says that it considers the Black Sea ceasefire and energy ceasefire to be working. 2 days ago, there was a night when there were no strikes on the energy sector. Today, energy infrastructure in the city of Kherson was damaged by Russian artillery. This is how it is working.
Tensions in the Baltic Sea are escalating as a Russian surveillance aircraft was intercepted by German fighter aircraft on Thursday.
The German Air Force scrambled its quick reaction jets from Lager Air Base near Rostock after the unidentified Russian plane, an Ilyushin Il-20, was spotted over the Baltic Sea flying without a flight plan or active responder. German Eurofighter Typhoons approached to identify the aircraft, which was then escorted back towards Russia's Kaliningrad enclave. The plane was first spotted near the German Baltic island of Rügen, prompting concerns over potential risks to civilian air traffic. While such incidents are not uncommon, the heightened tensions since Russia's invasion of Ukraine have led NATO countries to remain on high alert to protect their airspace.
Serbia is facing a potential oil supply crisis after the U.S. sanctions waiver for its Sol oil refinery expired at midnight, leaving the NIS facility at risk of losing access to vital crude supplies.
Despite ongoing talks, President Aleksandar Vučić confirmed that discussions to extend the waiver had failed, leaving Serbia's energy security in jeopardy. NIS, which is majority owned by Russia's Gazprom Neft, operates Serbia's only oil refinery. With a capacity of 4.8 million tons annually, meeting most of the country's energy needs. Vučić told the Financial Times that he did not expect any last-minute breakthroughs, adding that negotiations with the US and Russia had yielded no changes in the American stance. The expiration of the waiver means the refinery could face significant disruptions, as Gazprom Neft was required to divest its majority stake under US sanctions. NIS relies heavily on crude imports, with around 80% of its supply coming from Croatia's Janaf pipeline, and the remainder sourced from domestic production. With waiver now expired, Serbia faces uncertain prospects for securing the oil needed to sustain its energy demands.
French President Emmanuel Macron has hit out at Donald Trump's announcement of a 25% tariff on imported cars and car parts, calling them economically harmful and geopolitically inconsistent, and warned that Europe would retaliate.
Mettre des tarifs, c'est casser des chaînes de valeur.
Imposing tariffs disrupts value chains, creates short-term inflationary effects, and ultimately destroys jobs. So this is not good for the American economy, nor for the European economy, just as it's not good for Canada or Mexico. I also find it paradoxical that the United States' closest allies are the first to be taxed. If the current geopolitical strategy is to prioritize taxing Canada, Mexico, and Europe, while leaving others untouched, then I fail to understand the logic and geopolitical reasoning behind it.
In response to U.S. President Donald Trump's announcement of plans to impose tariffs on vehicles imported from Canada, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney firmly rejected any attempts to weaken the country. Speaking from Ottawa, Carney vowed that Canada would take its own retaliatory measures.
He targeted the auto industry and the more than 500,000 hardworking, dedicated Canadians that industry supports across our. It means our economy, and it means the global economy as well. And I understand and respect his goal to support American workers, but I disagree with American consumers. I reject any attempts to weaken Canada, to wear us down, to break us, so that America can own us.
The United States Agency for Global Media has reversed its decision to terminate funding for Radio Free Europe for 2025. The move follows a U.S. District Court ruling that blocked what the court deemed an unlawful attempt by the agency to cut congressionally approved funds.
The president of Radio Free Europe already called the reversal, quote, an encouraging step, but at the same time stressed the need for dialogue with the agency's leadership. Moreover, he also emphasized the importance of keeping the media outlet operational, especially as censorship around the world is on the rise. Funding for Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, was terminated earlier this month after President Donald Trump ordered the U.S. Agency for Global Media to be dismantled. In response, the media outlet sued the Trump administration, seeking access to the $77 million of funding approved by the Congress.
U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife Usha Vance will touch down in Greenland on Friday. The trip comes as relations between the U.S. and the semi-autonomous Danish island, as well as Denmark, have soured after President Donald Trump announced the U.S. should take control over the Arctic island due to its strategic location and resource potential.
During their one-day trip, Vance and his wife will visit Bidufik, a remote ice-locked U.S. military base in northwestern Greenland. The delegation, originally to be led only by the Second Lady, was scheduled to visit the capital Nuuk and Sisimiut for a dog sled race. The U.S. Vice President later announced that he would join her on the trip, and the White House decided to switch to a single stop at the military post after strong comments from the Prime Minister of Greenland as well as the Prime Minister of Denmark, who replied to Trump's comments saying that Greenland is part of the Danish kingdom and that is not going to change.
We are not for sale is the message coming from Greenlanders ahead of a visit to the semi-autonomous Danish territory by U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. Residents have expressed anger over Donald Trump's repeated claims that he wants to take over the Arctic island.
I don't want to be bought by and crook like Trump. I am a human. I am a human. Humans are not for sale. We are not for sale. You are not for sale in your country. You know that. That's why I am very angry about that. He's not welcome to Greenland and his administration because he wants to buy us. If he say I don't want to buy you, then he is welcome. All Americans are not like that. Some Americans good people, some Americans bad people.
Somehow we want to govern our country by ourselves without interfering from Denmark or USA. So I would like to say to Trump, don't even think about repeating it. Don't even think about repeat it that you want Greenland. We don't want you here. That's a clear message. We don't want you here.
Rome has a new public servant, but this one runs on AI instead of espresso. Rome's Chamber of Commerce, located in the historic temple of Vibia Sabina in Hadrian, has hired a robot to welcome tourists and visitors.
Hi, Adriano. What are you doing here?
I am Robot Adriano, the first employee robot of the Chamber of Commerce of Rome. I am here to assist visitors with information about the Temple of Vibia Sabina, the Empress, and Emperor Hadrian, as well as to provide guidance on artworks and artists. You're welcome. I'm here to help. It's a pleasure.
I think once people get used to it, it would be a fun thing to do, to be able to direct people. I think people will try it.
And so this little news of Adriano ends our news broadcast, but please do stay tuned. We're back here on TVP World in just a moment with more news.